Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the next podcast in Millinery.Info. Today's podcast is with Julia Knox, the owner of East Village Hatters in Manhattan, New York City. So thank you for having us in your beautiful hat shop here in New York City, Julia. How did you first become involved with the store?
Well, I moved to New York about 8 years ago, and one of the first things I did was enroll at FIT and take some millinery classes. I've been a fashion designer since college, and the millinery classes just captured my imagination, in that particular way that hats do. And so after my first couple of semesters there, my professor there introduced me to Barbara, who was looking for a successor. Yeah, so about 7 years ago, Barbara and I got together, and about 1.5 years ago, I finally did take over.
Fantastic. And when you took over from Barbara, were you in the same location, or have you moved the store?
We did move the store. So classic New York story, to be bought by greedy developers who want more and more money. And so Barbara was bought out of her lease about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to take over the business, but have to find a new space to do it in. So that was pretty exciting. But I managed to talk a lovely lady from our street out of her lease in this amazing space. And together with a contractor friend, we designed it so that it would be a retail space, a workshop, and also a teaching space. So it's like a very versatile space, all based around this amazing workbench, which is basically the weight of an elephant.
Yes.
Has all the trims in drawers underneath, and is on great big industrial wheels, so it rolls around to the middle of the store, and then the whole space becomes a classroom.
Amazing. And so how often do you host classes in the space?
Well, I teach about twice a month. Different classes, make your own fedora, make your own fascinator, kind of beginner stuff. And but then I have guest teachers from all over the world come to us about once a month. And so I've had some wonderful milliners from Australia. Rose came and chatted to us, Rose Hudson, and Jane Stoddard has taught a series of classes, which was wonderful. And I hope to have Jill Humphreys and Stephanie Spencer, and then wonderful European teachers too, like Maor from Tel Aviv, who actually was the first visiting teacher we had, and Jay Cow from up in Canada. I don't know if you know her work, but she is, she really, when she explores a new material, she explores every possible way that it could be used. And so when she teaches a masterclass, she has so much to give you tip-wise. And also it's such a unique way of looking at things, because she took a lot of classes in Australia. But like I say, when she really explores the material, she really makes it her own. So the stuff that she teaches is not like what anybody else is doing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And within your store here at the moment, we're in winter, so you've got a lot of felt hats. Who comes into your store, and what are they looking to find?
It's New York, so everybody comes through New York eventually, right? And our customer is super diverse. We have Americans who are going to their first European wedding and need guidance as to how to not stick out like a sore thumb. But also, with the real rise in hat wearing in the US, we saw a lot of casual hats. Americans are much more likely to wear a casual hat than an Australian or an English person. I'm from England, obviously, so at home, you're much more likely to wear a hat to a wedding than you are to walk down the street. Americans are much more likely to wear a hat to walk down the street than they are to wear one to a wedding. So we sell a lot of casual hats, a lot of practical hats. The weather here is really extreme. So it's really cold in winter, so you really need a hat. And the sun is really intense in summer, so you really ought to be protecting yourself. Yeah, a lot of people make a hat part of their daily wardrobe. But the fancy hats are more and more popular all the time. We do a lot for Kentucky Derby. More and more people are wearing them to weddings over here, or even putting on their wedding invitation that they're compulsory.
Amazing.
Which is nice to see. So occasionally we've done whole wedding parties.
And do you produce all the hats you have in store in the studio space, or do you have others?
Almost everything. So 95% of what's in the store is made by us right here. That said, I love to have unusual things by visiting artists. So I have like beautiful leather flower pieces by Stephanie Spencer, and I have some of Jane Stoddard's beautiful stiffened lace creations that she's known for. And periodically, or at least once a year, Mauro Zabar brings one of his amazing art collections. Although I don't always get to keep those for very long because they get whisked off to museums and things. And I have like local girls who make my cut and sews and things that we don't make in the studio here because we just have the millinery setup machine.
And what are the common materials that you're using? What's your favourite material to be using?
I mean, felt has got to be the most enjoyable to work with. It's so soft on your hands. Like the hat that I'm making right at this moment is made from vintage featherweight felt that comes from Paris. The tag on it said that it was delivered to the US in February 1952.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a real find. And you can see, again, we were talking earlier about vibrancy of color. Like the vibrance of color on these, they're manufactured in Paris, which of course no felt's manufactured in Paris anymore. And the vibrance of the vintage dyes is just, you know, the intensity is just so much better than on the contemporary stuff. And it's so fine, right?
It's an amazing felt. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So we use quite a lot of vintage materials, and those are very satisfying to use. Although kind of depressing, because in a way it's like, why doesn't this stuff still exist?
But you've got to enjoy it while you can and use it while you can, or else
and
it'll
actually,
be
this
never
is
used.
This one's the very last of this color, so it's a little bit bittersweet to make this hat.
It's a very special hat.
Yeah.
And where do you hunt for your materials when you are searching?
Well, this one was like these vintage felts. I actually spent about $30,000 on this little collection of felts. Was just a really lucky find. I just heard a rumor that a ribbon shop had unearthed an old collection. In general, I just talk to people, so I hear about what's going on. Also, one of the girls who used to work here, who still teaches here and designs with me in race season, is from the Philippines. And she goes home quite regularly. So she's been bringing us some new kind of materials and colors and stuff from the Philippines. So we're kind of excited to start working with Tinalac.
Yes.
Have you worked with Tinalac?
Yeah, we have Tinalac.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff kind of is common in Australia.
Yeah,
and in America, you know, we really only get Cineme. We don't get...
Do you have ginseng?
Nope. I have to order it from Australia. No, I mean, I have it, sure, but it comes from Torben Reina.
Yeah.
And we don't get silk albaca here.
Yep.
We don't get ginseng. We don't get Tinalac. And also, like, we're not taught to use any of those materials when you go to FIT, which is the main millinery program for the US. So that's one of the things that we do here at the store is we have these teachers come in and teach these more exotic materials that are just not getting touched on in millinery school.
So when you come into the store on a regular day, what does your day look like?
Oh, well, we're always making hats. So the first thing is usually to look at the hats that we blocked the night before and finish the ones that we've started. We always end the day with blocking and start the day with sewing and trimming. We do everything on the machine. Well, I say that. You know, the hats are sewn on the machine. Of course, trimming is all done by hand.
Yeah, and is that a chain stitch machine?
Yeah, we call it a millinery setup machine, but yeah, it is a chain stitch machine. Yeah.
And so that's, you're using that for head fits for...
It's got this, it's doing the sweatband, it's doing the outside welt. You know, our price point can't do everything couture.
Yeah. Do you have ones that you will finish by hand, or?
Well, yeah, when it comes to stuff in race season and like you know, you're making a really beautiful parasisal hat, you're not going to do the edging all on the machine. Yes. But yeah, it's definitely for the casual hats, everything's banged out on the machine.
Yeah. And then so you'll come in, see where you've been up to. Do you have to spend half your day checking your emails, or you've kind of got that one sorted?
No, as a small business owner, I basically am always on when it comes to emails. Yep. So that's something I do in bed before I even get up in the morning.
And you guys are very good on your social media as well. Is that something you manage?
Or it is. Everything is all me, I'm afraid. I mean, I have a lovely assistant who does a great job in the store, but when it comes to social media and marketing and the website and everything, this is all me. And but you know, we're lucky in New York because we interact with so many creative people on like an hourly basis practically. So, we just tend to say yes to everything. So people are always asking to photograph stuff or come in and take photographs of us, or borrow the hats for all kinds of film events. And so by saying yes to everything, we're just constantly creating content for our social media. So yeah, I think it really helps make the place look great. So yeah, I haven't had to actually take one of my own photographs for a really long time.
It's very fortunate.
Yeah, New York's great. And of course, so many beautiful models come through the place, and we quite often barter, hats for content.
So have you had any special pieces commissioned for fabulous New York events, or it just happens that they're walking up the street?
Yeah, we do a lot of events. The biggest event for New York of the year is the Central Park Conservancy Luncheon, and that's been going on for years, and literally year by year it becomes more and more of a serious event. And for the first time I got to go myself this year.
Oh, wonderful.
Which was nice, because I got to see our hats on heads and turn about 5 of them around the right way round. Yes, which was good, because the year before, it wasn't until they went into the press that I realized that people were wearing my hats backwards. One particular customer came in. I'd already seen her in the New York Times with her fascinator on backwards. And she came into the store and complained to me that her hat was very uncomfortable. And my instant response was, yeah, our hats are really uncomfortable if you wear them backwards. And so I instigated a selfie policy. Like, you have to take a selfie before you leave the store so that you get it on the right way around.
Very good
strategy. You think that would solve the problem? No, it doesn't. Because when I arrived at the Central Park Conservancy Luncheon, I had about 25 hats at the event. And yeah, 5 were not worn correctly. So 5 adjustments. So that's not bad, really. Only 20% worn wrong.
Would they be frequent hat wearers, or they've purchased
I guess
the hat
they're
to
not.
go
I'm
to the
assuming
event?
that they're not. Yeah, that this is literally the only, certainly for Fascinator, that this is their only Fascinator event of the year. And yeah, Americans are maybe not as accustomed to seeing people in these hats as people are in England or in Australia.
So when it comes to summer, do you have the same kind of stock in here for the summer wave?
So our casual hats, we actually do make pretty much exactly the same shapes in straw. And I mean, with a few exceptions, obviously things like the boater don't translate as well, although we do have it in felt as well. Yeah. But some styles are really summer styles. Or you see that turquoise hat over there? It's got this lovely kind of wraparound brim where it's really wide at the sides, and it's short at the back and kind of shorter at the front too. And that's such a fantastic summer shape. It's one of my absolute best sellers. I call it the Isadora. So you don't want to wear it with a long scarf in case you're decapitated. But it's really wonderful sun protection because it wraps around your face. I make the same shape in felt and I can never sell it. It's so dramatic, and why? Why do I want to wrap myself in felt this way?
It doesn't translate.
It doesn't translate. Yeah. But of course, in summer we have a lot more kind of fanciful.
Will you make a new range of shapes each year, or you bring...
No, I would say our stuff mostly evolves rather than being brand new. There'll quite often be a couple of new shapes that come in each season. But, you can't reinvent the wheel every season.
Yeah, it evolves.
So it's more that the colours and the trims are what make a collection. Yeah. And, but, the shapes are classics.
Yeah. And with your blocks, are these some ones you've acquired, or are they ones that you sought out?
Well, the block collection obviously is something that started with Barbara. So Barbara started building her collection in the early 90s. And, a lot of it's come from eBay, a lot of it's come from retiring milliners. So we've got plenty of vintage. I actually had a big clear out when we moved in here. I think we sold as many as 200 blocks before we moved in. I think I've got about 250 now. Lovely diverse amount, and then few of them are like my designs where I've made it from clay, and then I've had a woodworker make it from my design, or contemporary stuff from Guy Morse Brown or from Darryl, and they're all on display in the store, which is really fun, except for periodically people try and buy them. You're like, no, these are tools. How would I do my job if I sold you my tools?
Do you find it's a way of also educating people on how a hat is made?
Yeah, I mean,
in front of them?
One of the things people love about this store is how in touch with what we're doing and how we're doing it, you are. The workshop is completely open to the retail space. And so we're always here making hats when people come into the store. And then, like I say, the tools are part of the decor. So yeah, most people, rather than trying to purchase them, just find it interesting.
So how far in advance are you working towards?
I'm thinking about spring now.
Yeah.
So but we're pretty current season.
Yeah.
Because it's retail, we don't and we don't do wholesale at all. We're only direct to the customer.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about spring designs now, but I probably won't start construction until January. And then by the end of March will be completely summer.
Yeah.
And the same goes for when we design for fall. We kind of work on stuff for July and August, and then we switch over in September.
And will you replicate a style again? Like if this one sells in purple, will you sell another purple one?
Well, yes, when it comes to the casual hats, what's working that season often is made multiple times until the materials run out, quite often with the vintage materials. That said, we do some kind of more extravagant, more unique pieces. They tend to be more expensive too, that are just one-offs and won't be repeated.
Yeah. And for that Central Park event, is that something that's always been traditionally a hat event in New York, or only more recently?
It was designed to be a hat luncheon, and it's gotten bigger and more serious every year. So I think it was in its 35th year this year. And yeah, every year and there's more tables and it becomes bigger and more competitive.
Did you go to the event? What was your...
I wore a Paris ISO cloche, and it was pretty understated. I didn't want to try and pull attention away from any of my clients.
When's that event, and how far in advance do people come in for that one?
It's the first Wednesday in May. So actually it coincides with the Kentucky Derby, which is basically our two biggest dressy events of the entire year. Both happen the same week. So the Kentucky Derby is the Saturday and the Central Park Conservancy is the Wednesday.
It's a big time.
Yeah, so the 2 weeks running up to that, because of course you can't ever make people come early enough. The 2 weeks coming up to that is the most stressful 2 weeks of my life ever. Yeah, last 2 weeks of April, don't even try and speak to me.
And do you have one assistant in here who helps? Do you have other people who come in?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to have people jump in April. There's no way that I could cope without them. So yeah, I had, luckily, the millinery community is really pretty tight-knit, and the girls I went to school with are massively talented. And so I had a couple of classmates jump in and start work.
That's amazing. And are they normally working on their own ranges, or they're not?
Absolutely. The girl I was speaking about, who is from the Philippines, Denise Dong, she has her own line of accessories, so shoes as well as hats. So yeah, luckily that's not the busiest season if you're in wholesale. So she can come and jump in because we're retail. But also, that's when it helps to have your guest designers so that you're not having to make everything.
Yes. And how far will you order from your guest milliners?
So I'll be talking to the Australians probably in February as they're kind of winding down their season and we're just gearing up into ours. And I'm still feeling this stuff out because we didn't used to have guest milliners at the last store at all.
And what made you transition to having some other milliners come into the store?
Well, partly that it's just me now. Like it used to be Barbara and I together, and the expenses have gone up for the store as we've moved into a more expensive space, and I've got to pay Barbara for her business. So it's actually harder for me to afford an assistant full time. But also I like having that, there's only so many. I make a very diverse number of styles, but everything has my fingerprint on it. And so it's nice to have a few different fingerprints in the store, really increase that diversity. Yeah.
And have you found it's, because it's named East Village Hatters, is that something that you find that people associate with the name East Village, or they're finding that they're coming because it's got your style and fingerprint on it? Have people transition?
No. Well, luckily I do. Barbara Feynman's client, having worked with me already over there for 5 years, happily kind of came with me in this move. The name was really down to choosing something that is just very much a search term.
Yeah.
Right? Because people used to come in and be like, oh, I lost your hat shop for ages because I couldn't remember its name. And you'd be like, really? Because it's Barbara Feynman Millinery, and it's like, oh, it just didn't stick with you.
Yeah.
So you figure East Village Hats, because it's literally the search term. What was that hat shop in East Village called?
Put in Google, there we go.
Right, there we go. So we just made it a real no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it felt like too big of a transition to go from her name to my name. Like, that's so much more of a distance than coming to something generic like East Village Hats.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely to meet you.
It's good to be in the store and lovely to see all the beautiful hats.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast of Millinery.Info. This podcast was brought to you by the team at Millinery.Info with thanks to Julia Knox of East Village Hatters. If you've enjoyed this podcast today, we invite you to share it with a fellow hat lover. You can do this by sharing the link to our SoundCloud, our website, or share a link through Instagram or Facebook. We've recently introduced Patreon, which allows you to support Millinery.Info to produce more content more often. We're looking at building our resources, so please check out our website. We have a wonderful directory of milliners. If you're not listed on this website and would like to be, please send us an email and let us know. Or if your favourite supplier isn't included on our list of millinery suppliers and other resources, please let us know, as we'd love to include them. We hope you have a not free sewing day, and we look forward to bringing you the next podcast very soon.